Welcome back. I am now pleased to introduce Keva Hebrew High School as our second team to present.
This just in. Rachel Rubenstein's self-driving car, made by Keva Industries, has just been in a costly collision with Mr. Shimon Shalom's vehicle due to an out-of-place pedestrian. Mr. Shalom is now suing for retribution. Let's go live to the Beit Din as they make their final decisions on the matter.
The first question we considered with this case is what halachic damages are at play in this scenario, and also how is this car categorized? Halakhically? The first halachic damage we examined is that of expected versus unexpected, and animate versus inanimate causes of destruction. We believe that the car would be categorized as an ox, based off of Bava Kama 1:1, which states that an ox is alive and animate, as opposed to the fire, the pit, and the chewer, which are all either non-living or inanimate. We say that the car is as though it's alive because it's making its decisions directly based off of stimuli and its surroundings, as though something that is alive would do. After we decided that the car is like an ox, we had to decide what type of ox it is, whether it's an ox that is known to gore or one that is not known to gore. Based off of Shemot 21 verses 35 and 36, we decided that this car would be like an ox that is not known to gore because it has never been in a crash before, and it's also specifically programmed not to kill. Also in Shemot 21 verses 35 and 36, it states that if an ox that is known to gores, then the owner of that ox is fully liable because they did not guard their ox properly. However, if an ox that is not known to gores, then the owners of the two oxen sell both and divide their prices equally. The last type of halachic damage we examined is that of damage under duress. In the Navalei of Ramban to Bava Metzia 82b, it states that a person is completely exempt from any monetary accountability if they are under duress. When somebody is under duress, it means that their actions are involuntary. Ms. Rubenstein voluntarily bought and rode in this car, meaning that she is still liable. And then also, in Bava Kama 2:6, it states that a person is always liable for any damages they cause, whether or not they are under duress. So even if she was under duress, she could still possibly be held liable. This means that Ms. Rubenstein still must pay for the damages.
The next question we examined was who is liable to pay for the damages to Mr. Shalom's car. We decided that Ms. Rubenstein is liable because it was her car that caused the damage and she was the one that decided to start the car. A person is liable to pay for something if their property is the thing that damages another's. This is seen in Bava Kama 22, which states that someone is liable for something if it was their property or they started the action. Ms. Rubenstein both owned the car and decided to start it and therefore is liable to pay. This is also seen in Shemot 22, verse 5, which states that someone is liable to pay for damage caused by a fire that they started. Even though Ms. Rubenstein was not in control of the car when it caused the damage, she was the one that decided to start the car and is therefore responsible for all the damage that the car caused. Another reason she is liable is seen in Bava Kama 2:6, which states that a person should be warned at all times of their actions. Ms. Rubenstein needed to be aware of the damage that her car could potentially cause and is therefore responsible for the damage that it did cause. As stated before, the Navalei of Ramban to Bava Metzia 82b states that someone is not liable when under duress. However, this does not apply to Ms. Rubenstein because she voluntarily started the car and was therefore not under duress. In terms of payment, Teshuvot V'Hanagot of Rabbi Moshe Sternbach says that someone should not have to pay twice for the same damage. This means that if Ms. Rubenstein pays Mr. Shalom, and in addition her insurance pays Mr. Shalom, Ms. Rubenstein should receive her payment back because her insurance rates would go up if both her insurance and she paid Mr. Shalom, and this is as though she is paying twice for the same damage.
Our last question was asking if Keva Industries should have to change the programming of the car. Originally, we thought the programming of the car should be changed. Bava Kama 60b says that you are not allowed to destroy another person's property. The programming of the car should be changed since in the case of a car crash, the car has destroyed another person's property. But is it the car or the person the one that has destroyed the property? In the case of a self-driving car, it is more the car's fault than the person's. If it were a normal car, it would be the person's fault. Rabbeinu Asher 1015 says, A horse, or in this case a car, is a continuation of a person. They control it. The car is a continuation of a person even when it is a self-driving car. Then it is the person's fault. So it has to be the person's fault for hitting the other car. Because of this, Ms. Rubenstein is liable to pay for the damages. After we considered Mr. Levine needed to change the programming, we ruled that he does not need to change the programming since the car is already made to minimize fatalities. If a person had control of the vehicle in this situation, then they had the possibility of hitting the pedestrian and killing him. As Katuvo 19a teaches, there is nothing that stands in the way of saving a life except for idolatry, sexual immorality, and murder. The car could have killed the pedestrian, but it chose the right path by swerving. The car avoided the pedestrian because it was programmed to minimize fatalities, and hitting Mr. Shalom caused less fatalities than hitting the person. A person would not necessarily do this. Aliva Industries does not need to change their car programming because it is already made to minimize fatalities. If any change was made to the programming, for example, adding a human override option, then there is a chance that fatalities would not be completely minimized. We believe that these decisions reflect halakhic thought and many different halakhic sources.
So, as we have just seen, the car has been categorized as an ox not known to Gore. Ms. Rubenstein is liable to pay for all of Mr. Shalom's expenses, and Aliva Industries should not change their programming. This is Jeremiah Kirstein signing out.
Judges, you now have 8 minutes to ask questions about the team's presentation.
First question is, would you please explain your analysis when deciding whether Ms. Rubenstein was acting under duress or whether she was not acting under duress?
Of course. We, for a while, did think that she was actually under duress, but we figured that when somebody is under duress, that means their actions are completely involuntary. It's something forced upon them that they have no control over. So she could not have been under duress because her actions were not completely out of her hand, because she was the one who purposely got in the car, bought the car. Everything that had to do with her specifically being in the car was all of her own decisions. So that couldn't mean she's under duress.
Is it relevant in determining duress, where the point of duress might start? So, on one hand, there's the starting the car, which was a willful choice. And then there's the being the passenger in the car, at which point all matters of choice have been taken away. Do you distinguish between the starting the car and being the passenger in the car in determining what is, whether she's under duress?
When Ms. Rubenstein entered the car, she knew that potentially the car could cause damage, and with that in mind, she gave up her duress and was therefore doing it voluntarily because she knew what it could possibly do.
Okay. I want to follow up on the idea of the car as the ox. And you defined being alive as being able to respond to stimuli, which is how the car was programmed, to respond to stimuli. But in talking about the ox, you said the ox was not known to Gore. This was the car's first time on the road, right? It was new, and it was programmed not to kill. Now, goring does not necessarily mean killing. Isn't it the case that the car was programmed in such a way that it was known ahead of time that could hit someone or something and cause damage in order to avoid striking and killing someone? Want me to rephrase the question?
Yeah, if you could
So,
just kind of...
Is it really the case that the car/ox was really known not to gore? wasn't it programmed to do damage to gore in certain situations?
The car, the only reason that it stated that it would try to minimize fatalities is if there was an inescapable situation where the only instances that it can go through are either to damage one thing or another. And in the best situation, it would not hit anything. And so therefore, it's not known to gore because that's only in inescapable situations.
Did you think very hard about whether this might be categorized as fire? And if so, how would you analyze the effect of that?
So we actually considered for a while whether it would be an ox or a fire. We decided that we thought it made more sense as an ox. It's not fully either, but we said that it leans more towards being an ox to us because fire it makes decisions more generally based off of stimuli, but it's not as direct. Whereas an ox, it's very, very exact. Or not always exact, but it's saying if this happens, this will happen. So the car is programmed in a similar way, in that it's programmed in an exact way that if something happens, this will happen. It's an alternative intelligence form, and that's getting into of whether or not alternate intelligence could be considered as alive or not. And we believe that it's not that it's alive, but it's close enough to being alive that it would be more considered as an ox than a fire.
Does a fire decide what it does?
The fire does not decide what it does. The fire, doesn't have a mind of its own, and the car itself doesn't have a mind of its own, but it has a system that is driving what it does that makes decisions based off of stimuli, whereas a fire, it doesn't have anything like that. It's not anywhere close to being alive. It's just moving and going in certain directions based off of what's around it. Does that answer you?
Sure. I want to follow up on I want to ask a question about the double damages. So if she pays and insurance pays, then that appears to be the double damages. It wasn't clear to me what your argument was, but if she doesn't pay anything out of pocket and only insurance pays, it is the nature of insurance that her rates would go up. That's just the way it is. So who do you think should pay? Should it be out of her pocket or should it be the insurance? It wasn't clear to me how you were arguing that.
Our main argument was just saying that Ms. Rubenstein should pay out of pocket, but it was unclear whether we would say.
What we were saying is that Ms. Rubenstein should pay Mr. Shalom out of pocket originally, but then if her insurance then comes to her to collect from them because they are now paying for the damages for whatever reason, then in that scenario, Mr. Shalom would give her back the money she directly gave him because she's not supposed to be paying 2 times for the same thing. So if her insurance is going to pay for the damages, then her money that she already gave to Mr. Shalom will be given back to her.
Okay, I understand. Thanks. Anything else? Okay. Well done. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.